Hello everybody and welcome back to Sweet and Sour Soccer, and welcome back to another Premier League predictions. Guys, it is just me on today's video, but James has been giving me his predictions, so I'll also be letting you know his predictions as well. Guys, for those that have been joining us every week, you know that we have a head-to-head league, and let's have a very quick look at how we've been getting on. Obviously, week 4, I did good. 10 points versus James's 6, which has given me a very, very nice 9-point lead as we go into week 5. And I'm planning to obviously extend that lead too. Right, guys, let's jump in. And it is my club up first, Wolves, who have a little bit of a difficult game, let's just say, against Liverpool coming up. But is there perhaps some hope? Obviously, Virgil van Dijk, his ban has been extended, which means that maybe Liverpool might be a little bit suspect defensively. We've also seen that Liverpool, well, at times this season have looked a little sus defensively, but they will obviously have their new players that they did bring in towards the close of the transfer window, maybe a bit more up to speed and ready to make a bit more of an impact because, of course, they did eventually manage to fill those midfield positions. Wolves, on the other hand, did the exact same thing. Yes, they did lose. We did lose Matheus Nunes, but we managed to bring in some deadline signings ourselves, and it'll be really interesting to see how much they feature as well. I think 2 clubs which will be looking to maybe pick things up after the international break and really start to get into gear. But this is going to be a very close game, I think. I think some might be surprised about that. I know James is, because he's actually gone for a 3-0 big win. I don't think we'll be rolled over that easy. Maybe it is just me being a bit of a hopeful Wolves fan, but I've actually gone Liverpool 2, Wolves 1. I still think we lose, but I think it'll be a bit closer than what James has said anyway. Let's move on to speak about Fulham, who take on Luton Town now. And this is going to be one of those games where Fulham will be looking and setting their eyes on getting 3 points. Fulham, for a team that's obviously lost Mitrovic, they managed to keep Paulinho, which will be a massive for them. They'll really be looking to try and kick on now. It'd be interesting to see how Paulinho comes back and does, obviously, after what happened with Bayern Munich. But from what they've been saying, you know, he's committed, he's happy, and maybe he might get his move in January, where there's a bit more notice for Fulham to actually, you know, come in and actually find a replacement, because apparently Scott McTominay did turn them down, which is a shame to see, because we have seen how good he can be on the international break. It's a shame because I don't think he's going to get many minutes at Old Trafford this season. But when we look at the 2 clubs anyway, I think it is one of those games where Fulham will have their eyes on it. They'll be wanting to get a win against Luton. Now, look, Luton, for me, I like what they've done in the transfer market. They've obviously worked wonders within their budget, but from what I've seen of Luton at the moment, they've had to work on a real shoestring budget, and there is just that finishing touch that you need in the Premier League. I think they don't look the worst team in the Premier League, but what I do think is they've maybe just got that lack of quality up front to actually really hurt a lot of teams. For that reason, I've gone for Fulham to win 2-0. James has also gone for Fulham to win, but he's actually gone for Fulham to win 2-1. Let's move on to Spurs now, who take on Sheffield United. And look, this is a new look Spurs team, innit? The way it's going, we'll be able to make banter and laugh about Spurs' lack of trophies and just being Spursy in general, because this Spurs team is not looking Spursy at the moment. They're actually looking very, very good under Ange Postecoglou. What a difference James Maddison has been as well. And I think it's going to be this is going to be a good game, and I think it will be one that Spurs do have their eyes on, really trying to get the win. They take on a Sheffield United team who, again, a little bit like Luton for me, they just lack a little bit of that quality. But what we have seen is a real fight. You know, they fought well against that Manchester City team. They also fought well against Everton as well. And, you know, I think some big saves were being forced by Jordan Pickford. He had to make some big saves. And another day, Sheffield United maybe would have gone and maybe even got the win. So I don't think it's all lost, but I do think it's going to be maybe a little bit more difficult for Sheffield United when they go away from home this season. I think you'll see some big results at Bramall Lane, but away from home, I think that might be where they struggle. And I think the way that Spurs have been playing so far, it's going to be interesting to see if they keep Son up front, by the way, and Richarlison will find himself on the bench, because obviously Solomon did come in, he did very well. Son played well as the front man as well. I think Spurs get the job done. I think they get it done pretty convincingly. I've gone for a 3-1 Spurs win. James has gone for a 2-0 Spurs win. So we're both expecting Spurs to get the W this weekend. Let's move on to talking about West Ham, who take on Manchester City. And so far, well, Manchester City have just got a pretty, well, they're not pretty perfect. They've got the perfect record, haven't they? They're the only team in the league to have a perfect record. And part of me does just think, oh, please don't. Can we just not have City running away with the Premier League? Now, look, I have nothing against Manchester City, really. If I'm being completely honest, I couldn't really care. I've just got nothing against them, nothing for them. They're just they're a joy to watch, let's be honest. When you do watch them, you know, either live when they take on your team or just on the telly, they're obviously a joy to watch when how they play football. But the last thing I want is us really ending up a Farmers League. And the Premier League is kind of getting like that, isn't it? With how Manchester City just keep on ticking on. But they have got a tough challenge at the weekend, especially with West Ham being at home, because this West Ham team does look really good. The way that they've rebuilt after the loss of Declan Rice. They've brought in some real talent. It'd be interesting to see how the new signings continue to get on. So far, so good. They've also got Kudus, who they can add to that mix as well. And this is a West Ham team that look ready to compete on all fronts this season. They've obviously got the Europa League as well, but obviously do a lot better in the league than they did the previous season. I think West Ham pull off a shock here. I really do. I think West Ham do get a result against Manchester City. I think the perfect record will be broken. I'm going to go West Ham 2, Manchester City 2. James, on the other hand, he does think that Man City will get the job done, but he's gone for 2-1. So both of us expecting it to be a pretty close game. From one side of Manchester to the other, Manchester United up next. Oh, God. And they take on Brighton. I mean, look, 85 minutes in that game against Arsenal. They gave, well, what looks to be the winning goal. Garnacho through on goal. And everything from then has just been massively unraveling. Obviously, you know, Arsenal, they managed to get 2 late goals, kill the game, 3-1 loss. The goal, of course, getting rolled off for VAR. Then you had what's happened with Anthony at the moment. You've got Sancho coming out in the media and basically slagging off the manager. Of course, Sancho would have probably been someone that would have made sense to replace Anthony with everything's going on with him. But yeah, that doesn't look like it's going to happen. And Manchester United just feels a real mess at the moment. The Glazers as well, apparently also taking them off the market for the time being. You know, things just aren't getting any better for Manchester United. Brighton, on the other hand, it's going to be interesting to see this new look team with Brighton. I say new look, I mean one man that I'm looking forward to seeing, of course, Ansu Fati. Brighton, you know, they looks a solid team again. They look ready to compete in Europe, and that's what Fati has been saying himself. He says, you know, I'm excited to play in the Premier League. I want us to qualify for Europe again. Let's see if we could go one better and get the Champions League. Of course, there is 5 spots available. Of course, to do that, they're going to need to win against some of the historical bigger clubs, such as Manchester United. And I think they get the job done. I really do. I've got Brighton to win 3-1 against Manchester United at the weekend. James has actually got a draw. He's gone for 2-2. Hi, guys. Just a quick one from me before we get back to the video. If you could do me a massive favour right now, hit that like button for me. It really does mean so much if you could do that. It helps the video to get pushed out to other people, which obviously is great for us. And if you're not done so already, please do hit that subscribe button as well. And let's get back to these Premier League predictions. Let's move on to speaking about Aston Villa now, who take on Crystal Palace. I think it's going to be a good game, actually. You know, you've got 2 teams that could potentially hurt each other. The Lion taking on the Eagle. But you know, I think this is good. I think this will be a good game. I think Villa, it's at Villa Park, which will obviously give Aston Villa an advantage. And they've shown that they've got some real class about them. They've got some real good players, but Palace look like they've got a goal in them as well. You know, Ezzy's a fantastic player. Moreta, he could put up he's got a goal in him. And of course, you know, eventually we'll see Elise back. I don't actually know when he's coming back. I don't think it's going to be yet, though. I think he's out. Was he out for a couple of months, 2-3 months? So don't think he'll be back yet. But I do think Aston Villa will get the win here. I'll be honest. I think Villa will get the win because it's a Villa Park. I think they're just a bit too much. And I've gone Aston Villa 2, Crystal Palace 0. James has gone Aston Villa 2, Crystal Palace 1. So also, you know, expects Villa to get the job done. But yeah, he's gone for Palace to get a goal. Let's move on speaking about Newcastle, who take on Brentford. And of course, there was protests outside, although they were quite small protests against the Saudi Arabian ownership, as you know, basically Saudi Arabia are playing at the Newcastle ground, aren't they, in a couple of friendlies. You know, the protests did seem quite small. Of course, a lot of Newcastle fans are happy at the moment. Champions League football, they're obviously going back to their good heights, but they've not started that well this season, have they? You know, and I don't expect someone like Eddie Howe to come under pressure yet, but you do have to wonder how these owners are going to act when, you know, obviously if things don't go so smooth and whatnot, like how much grace period will Eddie Howe be given? That's something that I'm really interested to see. Obviously, he has got to integrate new signings, and of course, he's also got to compete in Europe as well. But you know, I don't know what's a good result for Newcastle these days. Like anything less than Champions League, is that considered a failure now, or is it just to get into Europe at the moment whilst they build as a club? I mean, obviously they did extremely well last season. I never thought they were going to reach those heights again straight after, but I do expect them to compete on the Europeans front. But they come up against the Brentford team, who's actually looked very good this season, even with the loss of Ivan Toney. They've clearly got goals in them. I like the way that they play. Thomas Frank, he looks like a good, you know, he's a good manager, isn't he? And, you know, they've got a few players that can bang the ball in the back of the net. I think it's going to be an interesting game. I'm actually going to call it as a draw. And both me and James actually have gone this as a 1-1. Let's move on speaking about Bournemouth now, who take on Chelsea. And I think a lot of this game depends on, obviously, I mean, what Bournemouth do, of course, but what Chelsea turn up. You know, when is this £1 billion worth of spend going to click? Because, you know, we laugh and we joke, but it's not like Chelsea have spent £1 billion on absolute dross. There's some talent in there. There's some people that can get goals. Raheem Sterling's looked great. Nicholas Jackson, okay, he's missed some chances, but he's looked a promising signing for a 22-year-old. And, you know, they've got Lavia that can play once he's obviously fit. But they've got Lavia, they've got Casado, they've got Enzo Fernandez. They've got a good back line as well. You feel at some point this Chelsea team really does have to click. Bournemouth, they'll also, you know, they've obviously made a lot of signing this summer, and they'll probably be looking to try and get things clicking as well. And, of course, at home, it does give them a really good opportunity to do that. I don't think they will, though. I think Chelsea will get the win. I'm actually going to go Chelsea 2, Bournemouth 0. James has also agreed with me. He's gone Chelsea to get the win. He's gone 2-1. Let's move on to speak about the last two games. And first up, we've got Everton, who take on Arsenal. Now, of course, it's not easy to beat Everton at Goodison Park. And if they are going to get some results this season, you know, and really start to build and maybe just not be a relegation team who competes for relegation every year, it's going to be at Goodison Park. But they take on an Arsenal team who are going to be full of confidence. Although they haven't looked perfect this season, let's be honest. Garnacho gets that goal. The feeling around Arsenal and the Arsenal fans might have been very different, but look, it didn't. Big win against Manchester United, and I'm sure that will carry them into some good feeling coming into this fixture. Everton, it'll be interesting to see how Sean Dyche lines you guys up. I think maybe he'll just try and get a result here. Maybe nick a 0-0 or 1-1 or even a cheeky little 1-0. And, of course, it'd be interesting to see how the new signings play as well. Of course, you have got a couple of strikers, which will be needing to do something there. Everton are going to stay up this season. I think Arsenal are going to have too much for Everton, though. I really do. I think Arsenal will win this. I've gone Arsenal 3, Everton 1. James also agreed with me on the result, but he has gone 2-1 to Arsenal. And to finish things off, guys, we have Forest who take on Burnley. And questions starting to be asked of Burnley, aren't they now? I think when at the start of the season, everyone was saying Vincent Kompany, he's going to be fine. And some were even calling Burnley to be one of those teams that come up and manage to land the top 10. The sentiment seems to have changed a little now. People are looking at Burnley and going, well, are they going to be all right? Like, this is a new test for Vincent Kompany. Burnley have obviously made a lot of signings, though, and ask any Nottingham Forest fan, it does take time for those signings to blend. It takes time to put a good team together. And, of course, Forest did find themselves in a lot worse situation sort of around November, December time last season before the World Cup than they did at the end of the season. It takes time to build, especially when you've got a lot of signings in. And it will take time, especially with a young, unexperienced manager in Vincent Kompany, or relatively unexperienced manager, I should say, to really take shape of that squad, learn who he's going to trust, who he's going to expect to deliver for him, and obviously implement these new signings as well. Nottingham Forest, though, they've looked very good this season. I think that, Awanui looks a superb player, but it goes beyond him, doesn't it? Of course, he has been the guy that's been getting the goals, providing assists, but Alanga, Morgan Gibbs-White, you've obviously got Hudson-Odoi as well. And yes, Brennan Johnson's left, but there seems to be enough talent there to just continue with things. Very impressive centre midfield signing as well as a couple of defensive signings to obviously build and give them a bit more strength at the back too. So I think for that reason, especially with it being at the Forest ground, let's be honest, at the City ground, I should say, I think Nottingham Forest win this one quite comfortably too. I've gone 2-0. James has gone even more comfortable. He has said 3-0. Guys, I have brought up the screen on the score lines on the screen for you to feast on once again. If you have enjoyed the video, please do me a favour. Do hit that like button. Please do subscribe, and hopefully we'll see you again. Take care. Goodbye.